YouTube, what's going on? Today I got a new reading Q&A's video for you guys. This is probably the best name I've gotten for this segment. This player, he's been to the World Series 3 times in his career. He won it once with the New York Yankees. He's been to the MLB postseason too many times to count. And he had a 16-year Major League career as a pitcher. The player I got to answer back is Randy Choate. I'm sure you guys know who Randy Choate is. He's played for a few teams in the major leagues. Recently retired Randy Choate as well. Just made his announcement last month. But I was so happy I got in contact with Randy, and he was more than welcome to answer a ton of questions for this segment. This one's a little different because I went to Twitter and Facebook briefly and asked you guys if you had any questions for Randy. I only put it out there for like an hour, I think, to send in questions, and I got a ton of responses back from you guys, some really good questions. So I'm definitely going to do that more in the future, having you guys participate in asking some questions to these big name players as well. I'm just going to read to you guys the questions. I'll start off with the questions I asked Randy, and then I'll move on to the Twitter questions and Facebook questions. Alright, so let's do it. First question for Randy. In 2000, you won the World Series with the Yankees. 2001, you made it back to the World Series and had the opportunity to pitch in the World Series. Can you tell me about your experience being a part of the World Series back-to-back years? What was the atmosphere like? How did you feel winning it in 2000 but then losing in 2001? How do you think you grew as a player in just that year span? So it's a pretty generic question, but I just was interested to see how he would respond to kind of a big question like that. So Randy's response, being a part of the Yankees in general, especially at that time, was awesome. The fact that we went to back-to-back World Series was a dream come true. Winning in 2000 was extremely lucky, considering it was my rookie year, but it was really awesome that it was the Subway Series. I think it made pitching in the World Series the next year not as intimidating. 2001 World Series though was really hard. Having Mariano Rivera out there and knowing you were that close to winning again made it extremely heartbreaking. What I think it taught me was to never take anything for granted, because I did not return to the World Series until 2013. That is where I think I grew the most over time. Really good answer right there. Couldn't ask for a better response. Alright, second question I asked Randy. 2009 and 2010 you played with the Tampa Bay Rays. Those were some of the best years in the Rays organization. What was your experience like with Tampa? And you guys might have not had the most talented roster, but you had a great young roster that seemed to play really well together and knew how to win as a unit. Would you agree with that? That was probably when I first started watching Randy Choate was with the Rays. He said, my experience with Tampa was the best of my professional career. I really believe that's when my main career started. Okay. Because to that point I had been up and down a lot and bouncing between AAA and Dominican and all over the map. Then Andrew Friedman and Joe Madden happened. The belief they had in me to do my job, especially Joe putting me in situations to be successful, gave me a ton of confidence. So there was no more doubting myself about getting done at the big league level. As for the team itself, most relaxed clubhouse, but knew when it was time to go to work. Even though we didn't win it all, it is still to this day my 2 favorite teams, years and organization that I played for in baseball. So really some high praise for the Tampa Bay Rays organization. Those were some good Rays teams to watch, really fun. 2012, you were traded mid-year to the Los Angeles Dodgers from the Marlins. Does it feel different for you as a player to try and make a playoff push with a team you only spent half a year with, as opposed to starting the year off with the team or playing with that team for multiple seasons? And what do you think led to the Dodgers missing out on the playoffs that year? So if you're a Dodgers fan, this is a good question, hearing from a Dodgers player himself. He said, yes, getting traded mid-season does make it tough in my opinion. You try to get to know new guys and different coaches, and until you do, you are really not totally comfortable. That Dodger team had 8 new guys on the team at the start of August, and I think that's tough to get chemistry to work with that quickly, causing us to miss the playoffs. If you start with the team in spring training, you build relationships with guys and know what everyone has gone through. Alright, 2013 and 2015, you spent some really good years with the St. Louis Cardinals. 2013 you made it back to the World Series against the Red Sox. I have heard St. Louis is a very wonderful place to play baseball and they have very knowledgeable fans. What was your experience like in the city of St. Louis? And can you speak on that 2013 team and going up against that tough Boston Red Sox team? If you guys don't know, I was at that Red Sox World Series Game 6 when the Red Sox clinched. I've been able to talk to a couple players that have played in that World Series about that, and it's pretty interesting that I got to see it in person and then talk to some players that actually played in it. Randy said, yes, the fans in St. Louis are great, but I like them as a whole a lot better as a visiting player. That's really interesting. They are very knowledgeable and differently love their team. As for playing Boston, I think it was two very evenly matched teams, but they were just a little hotter at the time. I think if we were able to play that series again, there would be just as good of a chance that we would have won. But they were hotter and deserved it at the time. Still tough to swallow when you lose. That's true. No one expected that Red Sox team to even do well that year, and they were just super hot in the playoffs as an underdog against the Tigers, and they beat the Tigers, and then no one was stopping them there. Because you have played with several teams across the United States, what is your living situation usually like? Do you usually live in a hotel or rent an apartment? Do you try to live as close as possible to the ballpark or try and get away from the ballpark a little bit? I usually would rent an apartment or a house depending on the city. Tampa and Miami were easy to find houses in those cities, where St. Louis was tougher. So in St. Louis, I rented an apartment across the parking lot from the stadium. In the end, you spend so much time at the ballpark that there is really no way to get away from it. It was a little easier on the road where we each had our own rooms and you were in a different city. Road trips are always my favorite, no matter the team. That's a really interesting response right there. I've never asked a player that question, so it's cool to see him kind of like dissect like which cities were good, like Tampa and Miami, and then maybe a little tougher in St. Louis. Okay, time for the fan questions from you guys on Facebook and Twitter. Again, thanks so much for sending in your questions. I don't remember who sent each question, but if you're watching this and you see your question being asked, leave a comment below and just give yourself a shout out. I don't know, but yeah, thanks again guys, and like I said, I'll do more of these in the future because it was really successful. First question says, what does your off season consist of? He said, my off season nowadays don't really consist of much more than golf and hanging out with family. I used to work out a lot more when I was younger, but as I got older, I felt the rest for my body was more important. That response at the time was really interesting because I knew he was still an active player when I got him to answer back, and then after I got my responses back, he announced he retired, so I kind of got like a sneak peek, like I kind of knew ahead of time he was retiring. What is your view of National League pitchers hitting? He said, I myself don't care for hitting. I also see that it's hard to lose a starting pitcher. Example, Adam Wainwright for a whole season because he's trying to run out a pop-up. When you have guys who are paid to pitch, they should pitch. Let the hitters hit. I think the game has changed a lot from the 50s, 60s, and 70s when that was more the style of game, bunting and such. Plus the money these days is so much more, and so those guys should be doing what they are mainly paid to do. That being said, I know there are a lot of guys who love it. Really great response right there by Randy Choate. A lot of times people avoid like answering that question directly, but he definitely answered it well. Favorite player growing up? He said, my favorite player growing up was Mark McGwire and Nolan Ryan. I know that's two answers, but I always had Mark the player and Nolan as my pitcher. If I had to choose one or the other, I was a pitcher who grew up in Texas, Nolan. Fourth question, what was Adron Chambers like as a teammate with the Cardinals? He said, I only got to play with Adron for a little bit, but the guy was a character, very funny and always put in his work. He worked on fly balls and hitting like very few do. He was funny off of the field, but played as hard and gave as much effort as anyone on the field. Cool response. He had a lot of nice things to say about Adron, who I got to meet this year, obviously, with Bridgeport. Do you think being a sidearm reliever contributed to your success in a league where most relievers throw extremely hard? Really good question. He said, throwing sidearm is exactly what got me into the league 100%. I didn't throw 95 plus, so deception was the key to any of my success. This question is kind of similar to the question above, but they asked, what do you attribute your long MLB career to? Randy said, while I consider throwing sidearm to helping with success, I would say my persistence is what contributed to my long career. I went to the Dominican Republic 3 times, got designated for assignment countless times, and was still able to stick it out. The sidearm part helped, but if I wasn't willing to do some of the things I did, I would have not lasted. A toughest hitter for you to face? He said, for right-handed hitters, A-Rod and Matt Wieters, not my specialty. Left-handed, Curtis Granderson. And finally, favorite Major League ballpark? He said, this is a tough one. Old Yankee Stadium, Seattle, and Toronto. I love Toronto as the total package, meaning city and ballpark and clubhouse. Seattle was just perfect weather and a great stadium. But again, if I had to choose just one, Old Yankee Stadium was just the best. I mean, it was the most sentimental to me and just an awesome stadium. Awesome response right there. So thank you to Randy Choate for answering all those questions for me. He really took his time to answer each and every single question. A guy that's played 16 years in major leagues, he's seen it all. He's had a million interviews in his life, and just for him to be willing to help me out, I really appreciate it greatly. And then I just want to thank you guys for sending in the questions like I mentioned earlier. They're really good questions, and like I said, I'll do more of those on Twitter and Facebook. When I announce a player, I'll be doing a reading Q&As for. If you don't follow me on Twitter, follow me at TyBronski10. I'll put the link below in the description box. And yeah, I just want to thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it. See you guys next time. Bye.